Well, when I say the time is now, the time is now. We're gonna go over a study that came out that said cities, you gotta get out. They're under the leadership they're under. It's not gonna change, and historically it shows that there's more crime, more struggles for the typical traditional American in these cities. So why do we still choose to live there? Is it because of the job? Is it because, you know, our family's already been there? Or are we too scared to move out? Well, let's talk about it today. And also let's talk about the fact that you'd be surprised how much more economical it will be on you by moving out of the city and getting away from the filth. Let's jump into it. Today's video starts right now. Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so very much for being here today. If you are new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up. That sure does help us spread our message across this platform. Wait, do you hear birds? You hear the chirping, you see the nature. When you wake up here and you wake up in the rural areas of America, there is a peace, there is a little bit more of a tranquil way. And even though the craziness of the world is out, we tend to have a little bit of a easier situation than most people in cities. Well, there was a study that came out on Zero Hedge that stated the exact thing. That most people that wake up in cities each and every day, especially Democratic ran cities, which is most of our bigger cities in America, all are more impoverished, more unsafe because of crime. The cities are literally in debt up to their eyeballs, and they're usually the fall. Even though it may have economics there because of all the people and the businesses, it tends to be the hardest place to live, the most expensive place to live, and it tends to cause more stress and anxiety on Americans. So why do we still live there? So let's go over that study, and then let's say, okay, you gotta get out. I mean, you've gotta get out of these liberal cities, but not only that, you gotta get out of these liberal states. It is time to get out. The story says Americans struggle the most when cities are controlled by radical Democrats. A new survey highlights that 15 largest U.S. metro cities where residents face the most financial difficulties are majority, of course, Democratic-led. And it has been for the last years in those cities. This comes at no surprise in issues and elevated inflation. Listen to this. Cities have more elevated inflation, higher taxes, soaring violent crime, a migrant crisis that is now spiraling out of control in these blue cities. The survey asked 70,000 respondents between March 5th through April 1st in major cities. What's the difficulty in paying the usual household expenses, food scarcity, and are you unable to pay energy bills? That is life. Can we pay our bills? Can we make our normal, a monthly budget? And how can we get food? Can we pay for food? And how more expensive is it? How safe is our quality of life, basically? The survey finds that Riverside, California, Houston, Texas, and Chicago, Illinois are the top 3 metros with the most financial hardships. All 3 of these cities are Democratic-led, with the exception of Dallas and Miami, which both, remember, Dallas was a Democratic-led and all of a sudden he changed to the Republican Party. Remember, Miami, he is doing some things down there, changing. However, he is one of the first Republicans ever elected there, and to be honest with you, he's still very centrist and rhino-like versus true conservatism. But of all these cities, it shows that they struggle making ends meet. It costs more to actually live there. They cannot find food, and when they do, it's more expensive. The inflation seems to be higher in the cities, and they have policies that are not protecting them. It's detrimental to their safety and their well-being of families. I told you yesterday, when we see these cities, what happens is usually they have a failing school system. Usually they have an alderman or city board that is making life tougher because they're allowing migrants to come in. They're allowing crime to go crazy, and they're allowing police to not actually enforce the law. Remember, in Baltimore, they're actually almost making like a purge curfew because there's not enough police to actually make sure the city is safe at certain times. So when we talk about getting out, think about it. If your food can cost lower in the rural areas, if you're not having to pay to park, if you can work and not feel like you're having to be nickeled and dimed by every new little tax that the city passes down, if you know that you can go to sleep at night and know that there's a risk of, safety and security. Of course, we lock our doors in rural America, but we don't go to sleep knowing that there's going to be gunshots and sirens going out all night. That should give you a peace of mind, and that should give you a reason to move. There was a survey done a few years back. It said a lot of people that are on fixed incomes feel like they are stuck in these cities. They said they cannot afford to move. Now, my question would be, how can you afford to stay there? There's been more threats, terror threats, there's been more migrant threats, there's been more crime in your cities. If something goes down, like for instance in New York, do you know New York, 99% of their food is trucked in. Less than 1% of their food for the millions of people that live there is actually grown and actually housed in New York. It is produced in New York. So say something happens in some of these big cities and they're a hub, however they have no way of growing food, they have no way of protecting their people. It's too many people in one general area. If something bad happens, there is going to be panic and chaos because there's not enough goods for the people that's there. Now when you get in these rural areas, it's desolate. Don't get me wrong, you're not going to have a new place to eat every day. But we have to get past the, oh well, everything's perfect and everything, we live in a perfect world and everything's happy all the time. We have to realize that our cities are burning down in America because we're allowing them to. Our leadership has allowed that to happen. Now, I'm not giving a pass for Republicans because most of them are still just as sleazy and bad at politics as the Democrats. But these cities, time and time again, year after year, they're putting their people in chaos. They're putting their people in poverty. Migrants and people in generality, American citizens in these cities, are so restricted and they depend on the government and they are pretty much crime and drug induced. What does that mean? That means for that area, there is a control element there. That means people feel like they can't leave because they can't afford it. People think they can't leave their home because of safety. People are being taken care of, such as the migrants, and getting free money. Also, the people that are living on the government are in those cities and towns because they've usually put them in together places. They usually put them in a very tight location, in apartment buildings or sky rises or places they put up for them. So what I'm saying is, what we've realized with these cities, you're electing these people that's pretty much keeping you in a captive way. For instance, in Mississippi, Jackson, our city, Jackson is the biggest city, of course, is our capital. Nobody goes to Jackson. Everybody's moved to the outskirts because nobody wants to go in Jackson. The crime is terrible. There's not enough police presence. And to be honest with you, the buildings, you look like you're almost in a third world country if you go downtown. Now, there's some government buildings and they're trying to revive some of it, but bottom line is, it's a broken city. It has no infrastructure anymore. No buildings and businesses are moving there. The tax basis is gone, and now the city sewage is crumbling, the water is crumbling, and the fact that they need to update and tax more people because they have lost so many people, therefore the people that are now living there are going to be extra taxed, which is going to hold them captive, or they're the people that live on the government and they have no other way and means of making money. So then you see these areas and neighborhoods that have no money and look impoverished and look like third world countries. For the cities, if you live in cities, especially these 12 that they listed, in which that's mostly the biggest cities in America, it says difficulty paying for usual household expenses. It costs 35% more than it does in rural America. Food scarcity, around 10% more than it is in rural America. Unable to pay your energy bill or utilities, 23% more on average than rural America. So when people say they can't afford to move, they don't have the monies to move, the finances to move, again, now you realize, yes, it may be a burden at first. Yes, you may have to save it first, but if you ever move out of these areas, not only are you getting cleaner air, not only are you getting this beauty that God has created, not only are you now saving money, you have a way to know that you're safer because you're not under the restrictions and the covenants and the extra taxation. It showed that cities now are having to up their tax. They're having to do more taxing to the city's businesses and people because they got to take care of the people that are there. It's not enough taxation and not enough money coming in for the money they're spending out. You know what happens when cities overtax businesses? Look at California, prime example. They're literally taxing their businesses out of the city. So that means the infrastructure, what pays for people to be there. The reason these cities grew was because the infrastructure and the businesses moved in. Well, if those businesses start moving out, and remember, they're loaded enough to just move straight on out, move to a whole different state if they wanted to. And you're the one left with no job, with higher cost. And remember, they have to make up that tax basis, so therefore, more captivity for you because that's more taxation, more regulation, and what's it going to cost for you to move? You know, California has a new tax now where if you built a business or you have an income and it grew in California and you move out of the state, they tax you even if you live in a different state. They want their money back. You know why? Because they're broke, because they have bad policies. What we've realized is Democratic-led cities, just like Democratic-led nations, they tend to falter because they tend to want to give more than they can actually pay for. They tend to want to promise more than they actually can do. And so therefore, what we've done is we have built a society where they have depended on the government. We've allowed migrants to come in. Now they're tearing up our cities. And it's almost like, well, we caused it. We're the ones that keep electing it. Jackson, there won't be a Republican ever win Jackson. It will take it destroyed before they will actually elect a Republican. So the whole city is ran by just straight Democratic ticket, like most cities. What does that mean? Nothing will ever change. More people will live in captivity, and they'll keep on complaining to a point where they are living completely on the government's dole. And that is why you have to get out. There is no choice anymore. You've got to move out of these cities. Now, I'm not going to sell my land. I'm going to live here, so I'm challenging you. You can't just freeload on somebody's land, but you can start the American dream like it's supposed to have been started. Go buy you a half-acre land. Go buy you a parcel and start growing some food. Start getting away from the city and the dangers of the city. And I promise you, you'll wake up more secure, knowing that you can prep better, knowing that you are more focused on your safety and security. And I promise you, it will be so much better for you if you make these decisions. One last thing. When you look at these cities, every one of them have murder going crazy, but there's drugs infiltrating. Also, their policies tend to be less godly. I mean, it's wicked in some of these cities. New Orleans has such a cool culture. I used to love going to New Orleans, but now I wouldn't take my kids down there. It's dangerous. There's shootings all the time. The city has lost all its culture and it's just become a complete slum. Now, is that against the people of New Orleans? No, just like it's not against the people of Jackson. But policies have problems. Policies bring in problems more than they should. Politics brings in more problems than it should. And now we're seeing ramifications of that. Lax drug policies causes for more drug users. Lax help for homeless, but also allowing homeless to live on the streets in tents causes for more homelessness. Laxed policies and letting your police enforce the law means you're gonna have more criminals. It's pretty simple. It's like, hey, a cause and effect. So it's kind of like our government. When all of a sudden we allow wicked policies to go in, wickedness comes out. These cities are wicked, and politicians that we're electing as a whole, and those cities are electing, are actually the ones causing the most damage. So it's time to get out, because they're not going to change. You're not going to make a great awakening in these cities, like as I said yesterday. Some of them are just too far gone. It's time to get out. So now, what can you do to get out? You've got to try to start making a side hustle happen. Look, even though we live here, we side hustle all the time. We're always trying to find ways to build a little extra money, a little bit extra budget, so therefore we can take care of our families to then build up a little extra cash to do what we want to do. I challenge you to do the same thing. When you're on a fixed income or you're on a tight budget, try to do as much as you can to sacrifice so now you can move out of the city. If it takes you renting, if it takes you living in a place that you're not really wanting to live, but at least gets you out of the city, it's worth it. Start making that journey now. Start finding ways that you can find another job. Right now, there's a lot of businesses hiring, and even though you think, well, it's not what I need, it's not what that's too low. Do you know Mississippi is the lowest income threshold? You're not going to make the money in Mississippi that you'll make in any other state. However, it doesn't cost you as much. So it's not just about the income you make, but it's about the expenses. If you make a ton more money, but it costs you a ton more money to live in the cities, it's a net zero. It doesn't bring any extra value to yourself. More tax, maybe. So you have to sometimes say, okay, if I know I'm going to make less, even though for a time I'm willing to do that, it's probably because it's going to cost me less to live there. I don't have to have parking fees. I don't have to have train passes and bus passes. I don't have to go buy my food every day because I can grow some of it. I have a better place I can put up food. I can budget and tighten my budget down to where I don't have all this extra taxation that they're pushing. These utilities are a lot cheaper. Remember, 30% less on some of these things. So why do we stay in the cities? It's time to get out. Don't try to fight for them. I hear this all the time from people in California. They're like, we're going to stay here and we're going to fight. Good. I wouldn't do that. Why? It's a failed state, and as much as you want to be the shining light there, I'm not putting my family through it. Now, if you're a person with no children, fine. But remember, your kids have to grow up in that. So selfishly, if you keep staying in these cities because you want to change it, remember your kids are growing up in that same wickedness. And that's why I challenge you to get out. All right, guys, let me know your thoughts. Again, I think you need to be out of these cities. I think a lot of the problems that we have are cities. You know, most states are rural and actually very red states, very conservative. But the city hubs are so strong, that's where a lot of the Democratic strongholds are, and that's how a lot of states are deciding who the president is. If we spread that out and start teaching people how to raise their own food, teaching them a core value and common sense again, having wisdom, you'd be surprised what we can do and change America. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember, tomorrow's video, we thought it was going to be today, but tomorrow we're actually going to be doing the video on Opus. We'll tell you a little bit more about the Exodus 600. Stay tuned to that. Remember, to get into the giveaway for that, for me, is to simply just subscribe to this channel, comment below. Also, subscribe to my Twitter account, TheColbyMac. All you've got to do is go over there and push follow. It costs nothing, and then that gets you entered into the giveaway, and I can't wait to give it to you. It's hundreds of dollars worth of a gift, and I love sharing our lives with you, and we can do that on both platforms. Guys, thank you so much for watching. God bless. Happy homesteading, y'all.